What's that? Let's hope for the best. But I think we've got it.
My feet are trying to run away.
All right, just dug out our
Alright, we're out here. And you see about a little bridge to cross here. There you go. Yeah! Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about water crossings in the backcountry, rivers and streams, things like that. And there is a lot of things to consider when you're going to cross water, both in spring to fall and winter. Yes, winter time as well. We're going to show some video clips. We're going to talk about things to consider and safety issues and strategies for crossing water, things that we've learned over the years. And hope you guys join us for this one. There's going to be a lot of points here. There's a number of videos online, but we've got a few extra things. Not everyone gives you the same strategy to cross water. There's different ideas, and that's okay. And I'm going to share our ideas and our experiences in the backcountry, and things to consider when you have mountains and melting ice and temperature changes and glaciers and all that kind of things. There's a lot of things to consider, so join us on this one. Alright, so the first question we should be asking when we go to cross water is, do you have to cross at all? You should be asking that. Maybe there's a different way. Is there a safer option? Can you cross somewhere else that's better? Can you hike out on this side of the water, creek or river? Is there a better place to cross where there's maybe some logs that go over the water, some rocks, up or downstream somewhere? Those are all things to consider, but do you even have to cross just because it's dangerous? And we found situations where we said, you know what, it's not going to be very fun, but we're just going to stay on this side because that's the safest option. It's going to keep us alive, and that's an important one to ask. And the second thing to consider is it safe to cross? For you, for the other people in your group, and any animals that you have with you. I take adventure dog Penny on a lot of our hikes, and I have to consider, can Penny make it to the area that I'm going? Is it safe for everybody in the group? And part of that, is it safe to cross? There's a few sub-points. How fast is the water going? Is it faster than your walking pace? Then you could be swept off your feet. How deep is the water? If it's above your thighs and the speed is faster than you're walking, that's pretty much a no-go. From what we've seen, and there is another point that we'll get which adds to that, but anyways, again, if it's faster than your walking pace and it's above your thigh, and can you see the depth? Can you even see it? If you can't tell how deep it is, you can kind of test it very carefully, but you better watch it because you could still be swept off. You might hit a deep spot where you can't even see where it drops off, and you could be in trouble. The next thing, which dovetails into those 2 points, is how cold is it? We have been in some of these glacial streams and rivers where it is so cold, within maybe 5 to 10 seconds, you're losing all feeling in your legs. And so when it's that cold, it's extremely dangerous, especially rivers. The temperature where it's flowing is extremely cold, much colder than any lake. Because of that flow, it adds quite a bit of extra cold. And so we've actually been in rivers where when we fill our water bottle, the water actually crystallizes into ice in our canteen or in our water bottles. So you have to kind of take those things into account. So beyond how cold is it, if you're in the wintertime, how thick is the ice? We're snowshoeing on lakes and creeks and stuff like that. Should be a minimum of 4 inches thick. So you need to be able to test that thickness. Maybe maybe you can do that with your trekking poles. Hopefully you have trekking poles you can kind of tap and see how much strength there is in the ice. Probably every 50 to 100 feet you should be checking that ice. And do you have a plan if you fall through? Are you spread out so that if one guy falls in, the other guy's not falling in with them? And do you have a plan of how to get out? So that's very important.
Oh yeah.
And you might want to unstrap your backpack when you're walking on ice so that if you do fall in, that backpack's not pulling you even deeper under, so you can get it off quickly if possible. Anyways, are there large boulders and objects submerged under the water, like logs and rocks and stuff like that, that you can see through the water that you know you're going to have to, it's going to be hard enough going through fast flowing water, but if you have to walk on slippery rocks or around them, that's just another thing to consider. So take a look at that. Maybe try to avoid sections like that. Know the terrain traps. You could be crossing over, and if you're not paying attention, it could be a steep bank on the other side. It could be steep banks on both sides, and it could be very hard to get out of the water once you get across. And also, not just for crossing now, but if it starts raining, if you have steep mountainsides on both sides of the river, that's going to collect into that water, so it's something to think about. We'll get into that as another point. Anyways, are you in the high water season or the high water time of day, right? If those streams are fed by glaciers, in the morning it's going to be at its lowest. By lunch and 2 p.m. in the afternoon, it's going to be at its highest. What's the forecast? Is there rain? Are there storms? Is it a sunny day? Is it going to melt that snow higher up that feeds the creek, and are you going to be in trouble? We have been in somewhat trouble ourselves, and we'll kind of show some of those clips here where going in the morning crossing over a creek was fine, but coming back, that creek was maybe 1 or 2 feet higher, and we couldn't cross. The logs and rocks that we crossed over didn't even exist on the way back, so we had to go upstream and find hopefully another place. Otherwise you're pretty much swimming across, and that's not going to be a good situation.
There
so
you go.
that's hopefully you get the point for number 2 there.
Yeehaw.
All right, number 3, stabilization. So what do I mean by that? Well, you should probably use something like, if you have trekking poles, use those to stabilize yourself when you cross. Something you can kind of lean into the water. If you kind of slip a little bit on rocks and stuff, it's good to be able to take that, if you're going to start falling, that you can kind of lean into something, whether you use sticks. You can always find a stick if you're in the bush somewhere, or those trekking poles, or if you have to use each other. A lot of these river crossing videos will say, lock arms together, or at least get close to each other, so maybe somebody breaks the stream and you go below them. There's all kinds of strategies there, but stabilizing yourself. Some people can use ropes to get across. I've seen that. But find a way to stabilize yourself when you get across, just to give you that extra edge. So that if you do step on a rock or a log or something unexpected happens, you fall into a deeper hole, that you can kind of help each other. So that's just another strategy. All right, next item on the list is how should you cross the water? So the first thing is you should unbuckle the straps on your backpack in case for some reason you get swept down river, you fall through the ice, whatever. That way you have the best chance of being able to remove your pack. For life safety reasons, you can always replace pack and gear, but you can't replace your life. So unbuckle your backpack. And the next sub-item of how to cross would be pre-decide where you're going to exit on the other side. Maybe pick 2 or 3 in case you hit some deep pockets and you have to adjust, and maybe you're past the point of no return and you got to find a way. So pre-decide. Pick a few spots so you're not kind of having to do that plus panicking at the same moment. The other thing is wear proper foot gear. Never cross with bare feet. You don't know what's in the water. There could be glass, sharp rocks, logs, all that kind of stuff. Just do not go with bare feet. Some people just cross with their hiking boots. I try not to. I always bring water crossing shoes. Some kind of good sandals, not flip-flops or anything like that. Those get washed away in the currents and whatnot, but something that kind of protects your feet from the rocks and from poking things in the side and above from debris. So good footwear, and how to where should you store your boots? Well, I tie my shoelaces together and I sling it over my neck, between the back of my head and my backpack, so it kind of sits on the shoulder straps after I tie the shoelaces together, and it just kind of hangs there, and I have no issue. It's high enough that my hiking boots aren't going to get wet, and this is of course when I bring water shoes. The next thing would be to face upstream. You want your knees facing upstream, and you're going to lean into that current forward so that as it tries to push you down, you've got better footing. You're going to kind of shuffle sideways carefully. Obviously, you're not going to go as fast as the other way, but this is your best bet for balance of getting across, face upstream. Next thing would be weaker people who are crossing. Maybe they're shorter, maybe they're younger, whatever. You can use a strategy where you're crossing and they're below you in the stream. And basically what that does is you're kind of cutting the speed of that stream a little bit, and they're just downstream of you a couple feet or whatnot, and that might help them to cross as well. You can lock arms. A lot of people do that as well. But that I found that only works if you have 3 or more people. So if you're like just 1 or 2 people, I'm not sure how great that works. Better to have sticks or trekking poles or something like that. But anyways, those are some strategies for how to cross. All right, the last point we're going to talk about is keeping dry. And that might sound funny because we're talking about crossing water, but as dry as possible. So think things through. You don't want to get too wet. So, one of the strategies is wear different shoes when you cross the water, like we've talked about. Your pants. Is the water going to be so deep that just rolling up your pants to your crotch area isn't enough? Should you just take your pants off, go in your underwear? Should you wear something different for crossing? It's important to stay dry because you're going to get cold pretty quick, especially when the temperatures are colder. It's later in the season or earlier in the spring, later in the fall. Keeping dry. When you cross over, I used to get a little towel to dry my feet off before putting on my socks and hiking boots. I don't do that anymore. I find after I cross, put my socks and boots on, I dry very quickly with the amount of water on my feet. It's not a big deal. If your pants get really wet, depending on the pants you have, wear pants that dry quickly. That's what I do, so I don't really worry too much about it. But have another set of clothes in there, another set of pants at least, and socks, so that you don't get trench foot. And you're going to see what happens if you do go crossing. Let's say you decide to wear your boots through the river. It's one thing to do it on the way to a destination. If you do that, it's going to be really bad. If you're coming back and you're close to the vehicle or close to camp, it's easy to dry out. But if it's just at the start of a day, now you're hiking with wet feet. You can get blisters, trench foot, all kinds of problems. So keeping as dry as possible. Think it through. Think your plan through. Bring extra shoes and socks and whatnot so that you can minimize just how wet you are if you're going to go on a lot of hiking after you cross. All right, so in conclusion, hope that we helped you consider a couple things to think about when you're crossing over rivers and streams and frozen lakes and ponds and whatnot. Do you have to cross, right? We talked about that. Is it safe to cross? How deep is that water? How cold is the water? Are there large objects under the water, potentially? Do you know the terrain? Have you pre-planned where you're going to go across and whatnot? Are you going to be able to make it out after you go in? Are you in high water season or high water time of day or low water? Are you going to be able to make it back? Do you have something to stabilize yourself when you cross? And how are you going to cross? Where should you cross? So these are all things that you should think about and basically consider your options, and hope this video helped you guys out. And if you have other thoughts, leave it in the comments, and we all benefit from that. Thanks. Bye.
Somewhere between the edge of